Hi everyone! So in this vlog I wanted to talk a little bit about mobility and flexibility. So the other day I uploaded a series of mobility exercises for the lower body and said that I would follow up with a vlog on why mobility is so important and the different types of stretching. So I see a lot of people that come to train purely to lose weight, develop strength or change their physique in some way or another, but with that they also found that they develop their flexibility. So although we don't spend a massive amount of time on specific stretches and flexibility exercises, you do find that as we go through the training it develops. So I want to talk a little bit about why that happens. And also the different types of stretching, because it can be quite confusing because there's so many different theories flying around about which type of stretching is best and what it does to the body and when it should be used. So there's so many different types of techniques that we can use for stretching. So people obviously go to yoga classes to work on flexibility. Some people will spend a lot of time foam rolling to try and release their muscles. Other people don't stretch at all, which is a bit of a scary thought because although yes, using strength training does develop that, we get a lot of tightness and it's great to release. Other people use it as a form of just getting their blood flowing, connecting with their body and just sort of feeling what's going on, which is also a great little technique, you know, almost a form of meditation and using it just to really feel what's going on. So the first section I'm going to go through is what types of stretching there are. So one that I sort of feel is probably quite old-fashioned now and a little bit outdated is called ballistic stretching. So this is basically where you're bouncing and you're using momentum to try and force the muscles or a muscle group into a greater range of motion. So now this is actually seen as a little bit dangerous and is also quite likely to cause injury because if the muscles aren't warm, we're forcing them into a place that they don't yet want to be. So the next type of stretching is dynamic. This shouldn't be mistaken with ballistic because although yes, we're moving the body, moving the limbs, getting muscles moving, we're doing it in a controlled way. So you're developing the sort of range of motion in quite a gentle way. So it could be sort of doing gentle arm swings, leg swings, torso twists, just to get everything moving but in a slow, controlled way. But it's also quite a good way of getting the heart rate up, increasing blood flow to muscles. So it's seen as quite a good way of warming up for any sort of sport or exercise session really, because it's getting everything moving, getting the blood flowing in quite a nice gentle way. So the next type of stretching we've got is static. So this kind of is what it says on the tin. It's stationary, you're holding a stretch. And with this we can break it into two different sort of subsections. So one type is active static stretching. So this is where you're simply using your body weight to hold a stretch. So you'll position yourself into some sort of stretch and then you're holding it there. So your muscle is at the length it can go to, you're at the range you can go to, and you simply hold it there. The next one is passive static stretching. So this is when you've got some sort of force that's helping you with the stretch. So this could be some sort of equipment. A lot of people you might see putting a resistance band around their leg whilst they're lying on the floor to pull their leg a bit closer to try and stretch those hamstrings. It could also be from a person, so again you could do, going back to the hamstring stretch, somebody pushing on your leg to try and increase that stretch. And another way of doing it is actually using another body part to increase the stretch. So if you imagine doing a tricep stretch, you're taking the arm over the top, but then if I press with my other arm, we're increasing that stretch. So that's another form of static stretching. So you find that we sort of hold these for at least 30 seconds to try and get the full benefits from the stretch. So the next type of stretch I want to talk about is isometric stretching. So this is basically when we're using a force to develop the flexibility and range in a muscle. So isometric is when we're lengthening a muscle but it's also still under force. So it's still kind of contracting and it's controlled. So if you think about when we're doing a bicep curl, as you take the weight down, that bicep's still working, but it's actually lengthening. So this is seen as one of the best ways for developing flexibility. That extra little bit of force is going to help increase the flexibility through a muscle, and it's also going to help build strength, and with the strength comes a greater range of motion. If you imagine the muscles as a car, the more you push them, the better your brakes need to be. So if you can take a muscle or a muscle group to a greater range, you still need the strength to be able to control it at that range. So a lot of people associate strength with limited range of motion and limited flexibility. This tends to happen when people use strength training exercises and don't go through their full range of motion. If someone's doing quite shallow squats or little contractions, then the muscles aren't going through that full range of movement, which is going to help them develop the flexibility. So they're some of the types of stretching and how we can use them to sort of enhance our performance, or how we can avoid things like ballistic stretching to help avoid injury. So I want to talk a little bit about the stretch reflex next. So this is basically a sort of response from the body, a little bit of a protective mechanism that's designed to stop the muscles overstretching and as a result becoming injured. So basically when we ask a muscle to stretch, a little signal is sent to the spinal cord, and then the spinal cord bounces one back saying contract. So if you imagine you're walking along uneven surface and you go down a pothole and your ankle slides to the side, the instant reaction from the body is going to be to tense the muscles around the ankle to try and strain it back up. So the same thing applies when we're doing stretches. If you go to stretch the hamstrings, the initial response is to go tight, and then if you allow a little bit of time in that stretch and allow the brain to then make a conscious decision to override that stretch reflex, the muscles will then start to relax. But the initial response is to go, no, tense. So if you spend a bit more time in that stretch, that's when you're going to get the release, because you've told the brain to send the signal to the muscles to relax and that it's okay, we're not in danger, there's no threat, that we're actually just going to allow the stretch. So the next thing to discuss is, does stretching actually work? There's a lot of debate around that, with people having different theories about the different types of stretching, what happens to the muscles, do they lengthen, do they stay the same sort of length, what actually happens. So in sort of most recent research, people have found that actually the muscles don't necessarily lengthen, but it's actually a conditioning effect that is the brain allowing the muscles to take the brakes off. So if you're used to doing the same exercises each day or the same movements all the time, example, picking bags up off the floor, you do that every day, your body's used to that, it allows it to happen. If you then sit on the floor and try and touch your toes, if you're not used to that, the body's like, no, we can't do that, thanks. But if you keep working at that every day, you will get closer. And rather than the muscles actually lengthening as such, the body's allowing the stretch to happen more. You're allowing the body to sort of reach a bit more, and you're teaching the brain that there is not a threat there and that actually it's okay to allow that range. So that's more of what stretching actually does. So the best stretching for you, or what you're trying to achieve. So I would say that if you're just looking to try and feel good, keep everything moving, then a great way of doing that is through something like yoga. You're gently going through a different range of movements, and each week you would find you gradually ask a little bit more of the body. If you're looking to really sort of develop your flexibility, then the best way of doing that's going to be through strength training, because you're using that isometric lengthening technique that's going to help develop a bit of strength, but also the range. So that would be sort of my suggestions for if you're trying to just keep the body moving. If you're sat at a desk all day and you want to remind those muscles what they're doing, then going through gentle practices such as yoga are great, or just a simple stretching routine like the one that I uploaded the other day, and I've got another one on upper body mobilisation. But if you're really trying to develop your flexibility, if it's something that you need to work on, then doing it through strength training is going to be a great idea. So I hope that's been of help and sort of cleared up some of the myths around stretching and how it should be used.